Hello and welcome to the Gallant Few Rangers podcast. My name is Mason Stewart and I'll be your host this evening. So it looks like we're on the brink of a new manager, which is exciting. So we'll be coming on to that. But before we do, let's introduce tonight's guest, the two Davies, starting with Davey T. How are you, Davey?
Yeah, great, thanks. Just sort of watching my home team getting put out the World Cup, I think. The way it looks at 1-0 for Spain with about 15 minutes to go. So I think there's going to be pandemonium going on here tomorrow. So that'll be quite funny. But, we've got some things to talk about with Rangers, so we'll start with that anyway and go on with it.
Yeah, no, we will definitely be touching on the World Cup towards the end, Davey, for sure. And yeah, Germany look like they're out, which, to be honest, I think everyone's quite pleased about that. Davey P, not been on for a while, are you, Davey?
I'm good, Mason. Yeah, good to be back on to see you. And I think what I said last time when we were, in the death throes of Gio, it was not a question of when, it was when. And I think the same is now true of Michael Beale. It's not a question of if, it's just when. So it's looking like tomorrow. So yeah, it's exciting times because, but he's got a big job ahead of him. There's no doubt about that. So it's not going to be, click these fingers and it all will be sweetness and light. There's a lot of hard work, but hey ho, it's, as I said in my moniker, it's a new beginning. So I'm hoping that Michael is going to be absolutely crucial the next few weeks in terms of, getting the right staff in. So we've got to cut the guy a wee bit slack in terms of what we expect of him straight away. So we have to calibrate our expectations. So, but I'm quite prepared to do that.
Before we sort of come on to Michael Beale, Davey P, you obviously haven't been on last week when Gio, or this week when Gio got the sack. So what was your sort of thoughts on that, and was it a surprise that he's no longer Rangers manager?
No, it was no surprise. I think it was inevitable, from some of the results. I think it was an accumulation. I think the tipping point was probably the Liverpool game. It was for me anyway, in terms of, the going to Parkhead, the way we set up, the way we approached the whole game. So that was the domestic football. And then when we got to the Champions League, and, you tip your hat to him, for getting us there and the away tie at PSV, which was a big hurdle. But we got over that. But in terms of his approach in the Champions League, right from the outset, from Ajax away, it just looked like we just did not believe it. We just looked like we didn't belong there. It was like going through the motions with lack of ambition. And then when we got to Liverpool at Ibrox, the ceiling came in. That was just a catastrophe. And I think from that moment on, we realised this isn't going to fly. And the domestic results which surrounded that, in terms of Livingston, St Johnstone, we are not as consistent as we need to be domestically, because we need to be competing. It's as simple as that. So if he's not going to get Rangers to that standard, then it was inevitable that Gio was going to go. I'm glad the board, saw sense and moved, within the World Cup break to make it, because I think there was probably a temptation to kick the can down the road. But I think the Rangers support had pretty much made up their mind that there was no longevity in Giovanni van Bronckhorst. It just wasn't going to fly. The league this year is going to be a challenge, but you would say, well, never say never. But the pressure is on Michael Beale straight from the start. But we have to, as I said, kind of ease up on our expectation here. There's going to have to be a lot of changes at Ibrox to get this thing back on the rails. So I'm prepared for that. I'm in for the long haul.
Davey T, let's come on to Michael Beale then. I know that you said that you wanted him fairly early, and you said that he would jump at the chance if Rangers come calling after, even though he said that, turning down the Wolves job only, a month ago, and said that loyalty and integrity were two big things for him. But it looks like he's going to be coming back to Rangers. So what's your sort of thoughts on this? I can see some comments coming in about Michael Beale already. What is your overall feeling of Beale?
Well, I'd just been reading between the lines and things that he'd been saying before. I knew that he loved Rangers. I knew that he loved where he lived in Scotland. And it was just easy to know that if the Rangers did come calling, that he would have jumped at the chance. I could see that a mile away. And, well, it looks like we're going to get him. Hopefully the fans will get behind him. For me, the first fix he's got to do is get the players a lot fitter than they were. I think that was Gio's big turnaround, that he just lost the fitness of the players. And then he lost. I mean, there's all sort of rumours about a fight in Portugal or whatever, things like that. That he had a fight with the players. But we're moving on from Gio. By the way, Gio wrote a note today on his website. So I'll read it out. The opportunity to manage an institution like Rangers is a privilege which very few are afforded. As a former player, I understood the responsibility and the magnitude of the task. My backroom staff and I worked with energy, passion, and were driven with a belief that we could achieve amazing things. We treated our roles with respect, optimism, and determination. We experienced some incredible highs, especially on our European journey to Seville. Winning the Scottish Cup for the first time in over a decade and qualifying for the group stage of the Champions League is something I am very proud of. The passion of our support drove us on to achieve those wonderful memories. For that, I am forever grateful to every single one of you who travelled near and far, spent your hard-earned money, and never gave up supporting our team. This season, like every year at Rangers, the first priority is domestic success. I understand that. The hurt when wins become draws and worse when we experience defeat. That isn't acceptable at a club of Rangers standing. No one understood that and felt that more than I did. I faced unique challenges and some very difficult circumstances to operate in. Rangers FC will always be in my heart, and I wish the club all success for the future. Once a Ranger, always a Ranger. Well, that was his statement. I think the big thing is that where he said, I faced challenges and some very difficult circumstances. I think we'll have a go at filling that in. What he meant there. Did he mean the board? Did he mean injuries obviously could have come into it? Don't know whether that's a wee swipe, but I'll let you have your say in that one.
Dave, can I first of all challenge the authenticity of that? Because if that was properly Gio, there'd have been about 2,000 A's in there, and there wasn't one.
I'm just glad to get through it. I'm going to make a mug of this reading this.
No, but Davey, in all seriousness, I think there is a little dig there at the ball. I do think that there is a little throw out there, and I think it's fairly obvious that okay, there was a lot of injuries, but I do think that there were certain players that Gio wanted to bring in, like Gerrard, by the way. And this is the worry for me with Beale coming in, and David P. I'll come to you on this one. Beale's leaving a job, a very safe job, I think, at QPR. To come to us, surely he's coming with the board saying you're going to get money in January, you're going to get money in the summer, but enough money to sort of build on what him and Gerrard both built previously. That the reason for Gerrard going was as we know, he didn't get back to the transfer market. Beale said he was really surprised with the board's in an interview with BT Sport, and anyone that hasn't seen it, I recommend watching it. He said he was surprised with the budget that we had at the time. He thought it would be more. So I find it such a weird one that Michael Beale's turned down Wolves in a Premier League job, and the finances that are involved with that, to then, a month later to come to us. I understand that he loved his time at Rangers and he loved living in Scotland, but I just, not to leave the QPR job at all. I just think to not take that Premier League job and then to take our job, and there's no guarantees that the funds are going to be there.
Mason, there's no doubt about it. This is a huge gamble for Michael Beale. But I'm hoping that Michael Beale, I mean, I'm sure he'll be at Ibrox and as part of the conversation with the board, that he will get some copper bottom guarantees as to what level of backing he is likely to receive, because he would be setting himself up for a huge fall. And which is why, when in Gio references, difficult conditions, I'm absolutely astonished that Giovanni van Bronckhorst would not have been given similar guarantees and an absolute central role in player selection. Because if my understanding of this is correct, then Ross Wilson is the chappie who will identify, players and then go sign them and then hand them over to Gio to then make it work. I just find that absolutely incredible. I really do. And if Michael Beale is going to take the job on that basis, then he has got a real job in his hands, because Rangers board should be, come up with the money. And give Michael Beale the guarantee of here's the kind of level of funding you can expect to see. Here's, not down to 3 decimal points detail, but certainly in terms of broad brush terms, there would be some sort of budget, some number will have to be mentioned, which Michael Beale, he knows he's working within. And then it'll be up to Michael Beale to identify the players that he needs, and if he can get them in at the budget which the board will back him to. So if we can sell players, obviously that will move things on a wee touch. But I'm sure they will be having an honest, conversation, look him in the eye and say, here is the job. Are you prepared to do it? So there's no doubt about it. It's a huge challenge for Michael Beale and a huge risk, because he's not taking the easy option here. Because as you've just said, he had the job at QPR where he wouldn't be under the same pressure. He had the opportunity to go to Wolves within the Premier League with probably a far higher budget than Rangers will offer him. And he is, if what is correct, and we're led to believe that tomorrow he will be appointed, then you have to say, well done, Michael Beale, because he's taking on some challenge here, and good luck to him. We'll all be behind him, but I would implore the Rangers support, that this isn't going to, there's no bloody magic lamp where he's going to rub it and I grant you 3 wishes. It's going to be at the long haul here. We need to stay with him, but what we've seen of Michael Beale in the past, at least we know we're going to move away from, the safe football, the kind of low risk stuff that Gio got us into, which is just not the required model for the Scottish Premier League. When we're going to Easter Road, when we go to Pittodrie, most away games, to be honest, and it almost seems like, we want to play on the counter-attack. Mm-hmm. Rangers shouldn't be playing in the counter-attack against anyone in Scottish football. So I'm hoping that, and Michael Beale knows that. So the good news for us is that he knows exactly what he's getting into. I'm just hoping that whatever detail he has ironed out with the board will satisfy him that he can do the job. And we kick off tomorrow.
Yeah. And just on a comment there from Curry saying, if QPR have any players that would fit into Rangers, they've got a good attacking player that plays out on the left as well, Chris Willock, which is Joe Willock's brother that plays for Newcastle. He's out of contract. He's a young player. I think hopefully Premier League clubs are linked, but it'd be good to snap him up on that left side if Ryan Kent's not here. But yeah, I think you make some really good points there, Davey. And I'll be honest. I think you two are, quite pleased with Beale. I'm very much not sure. I think someone posted, and I've said previous pods that Sean Dyche was my first sort of choice. But again, that's a gamble. And any manager we go for, it is a gamble. That's just where we're at. The big worry I've got for Beale is that he comes in and he backs these players that have let us down time and time again. I think if he's coming in, he needs to come in and clean the slate as a manager that didn't know them players. I've heard a couple of rumours, and I don't know how true they are, that he's been texting, the players quite a lot over the last few weeks. And I just hope he doesn't come in and, we see the same faces again next season. I think it's time for a rebuild, and he's got to be really strong on that, because otherwise, it just won't work. Davey T, what's your thoughts on that? on him coming in, and he knows the players, which is great, but he does need to come in and make some changes as well.
Well, I think that getting the players that are there now playing again, I think that'll be his first job. Get them fit. Maybe a wee trip out to Ghislaine Sands for a couple of weeks. I'll help him. But no, I think that's and I think it was James Toney or something like that said his style was murder, and it was. The way he played football, it just wasn't now good to watch. It was boring, and I mean, we're just keeping the ball while we're kicking along the back until there was maybe one movement up front. And I don't know whether he was stiff on the likes of Kent. Well, I mean, if you come in, remember the number 2, Mackay, said tricks are for the circus or not for on the football field. I mean, I think that's a lot of crap. If you can beat somebody with a trick, why not do it? I'm a wee bit. Remember I can't remember the guy's name that done the butterfly kick when he played, was on the loan, and he done the butterfly. And everybody went mad because he had done that. I don't understand that. If you can beat a player that way, why not? Why don't use it? But, he did. The players regressed. That's for sure. And I'm 90% certain it was down to fitness. But I mean, if you look at the way Morelos has never been fit for the whole season. I mean, I think he had as big a gut as I've got, which is saying a lot. But no, that's his first thing: getting the players fit, talking to them, and obviously something had happened with Gio and the players. I think that's pretty obvious because they weren't playing for him anymore. So he needs to get that sorted out, get the players playing for him, and I think there's a lot he can do with the squad that he's already got. Obviously, it'll be to the end of the season because I agree totally with you that at the end of the season, players need to be moved on and new players brought in. I think every team's got a sort of a sell-by date, and I think we should do that, and I think that's the times now. Whether the board are giving them money or not, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really understand these FIFA financial rules that are sort of we weren't allowed to buy players because we had reached the top of our limit. And I don't really understand that. I mean, how can Barcelona be billions in the red and still be able to buy players, and yet we're a couple of million down and we can't buy players? I don't understand what the rule is there that allows Barcelona to be billions and euros in the red and still buy players. I don't understand that. But as Davies says, the big thing, if Ross Wilson is going to be bringing in the same players of the class that he's been bringing in the past, then we're not going to get any better very quickly. So that needs to be sorted out as well. There needs to be sorted out that we bring in players that are worth playing for Rangers and not players that are filling numbers and don't look as if they're ever going to be good Rangers players.
No. The biggest thing for me with Michael Beale, with him coming in, is he needs to get his backroom staff absolutely spot on. Something that you just alluded to there, Davey, about Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, and I think his backroom team was all wrong. You're sort of looking at Dave Voss coming from the Ajax youth, Roy Mackay. You know, he didn't add anything, and you know, look at the career he had as well, when they're just, you know, sitting there, and the other guy that got Bowley, who his comments on Twitter this week about Gio was sacked because, you know, of his own success, which I hope he's going as well, because he's come and we've got even worse. So Davey P, on Bill's backroom staff, there's everyone's debating this at the moment, whether, you know, we should get Neil McCann in, Kevin Thompson. You know, two of the names, the Scottish links. Now, I would like, you know, a Rangers connection there. I would like that, but it's not essential. I just think we need to get people in that are well suited. You know, the two that I'd love to see back at the football club with Bill would be Jordan Milsom and Tom Coleshaw, because Coleshaw with the set pieces, we hardly score from set pieces, and we concede from a lot of set pieces. So I would love Coleshaw back, and Milson was big on the fitness, and David T's already touched on the fitness, and I think there is a lot to it, just more than fitness personally. But them two would be two I'd love to see back at the football club, and they're both left Villa with Gerrard, so It's a case of whether they want to come back or not. But what's your sort of thoughts on Beale? You know, he's only 20 games into his management, so a bit of experience with him is essential.
Well, he knows he's been around Ibrox, so he pretty much knows what he's getting involved in, you know. But he's now going to be the man, you know. So he will be all this. The spotlight will be very much on him. Who his backroom staff is, I will pretty much leave up to him. You've just got to trust the guy, you know. So if we're giving him the job and the Rangers board, you know, are satisfied he's the correct man to do it, then hand it over to Michael Beale and let him get on with it. And the same with the players, because, you know, I mean, texting the players, I wonder. I'd love to see what was in those texts. I mean, hopefully it's a nightmare coming your way, because the squad that are there at the moment, I think pretty much as I've put on the screen, it is pretty much a new beginning, because, you know, whatever those players did in the past, they did in the past. And as we all know, you know, you're only as good as your last pass, I think, as Richard Gough put it. So they're pretty much, it's a clean slate. You know, we've got you will be judged on how you perform. So we're not really interested in how you performed, you know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's what you do from here on in and what you contribute. Because what I expect of Michael Beale, and I pray to God that he will be completely ruthless in going through the current staff and going through the backroom staff. Whoever's not up to the job, then, you know, we say we love you like a brother, but get to fuck. Because we need to put in place the proper structure to get a successful Rangers team on that pitch, and we do whatever's required to do that. So it's not an old pals act. I'm not asking, you know, Michael Beale to come in and give Tav a hug and say, "Oh Christ, how much I've missed you." Enough. We don't want any of that stuff. We want to come in and say, right, who can I work with? Who has to go? And be brutal. I want them to be absolutely ruthless. And that's what I expect from Michael Beale starting tomorrow.
That's going to be the intriguing thing, Dave, isn't it? Because we've seen Beale, you know, the players have spoke about how big Beale is on the training pitch and, you know, tactics, and he'd done a lot of the analysis. And Gerrard was the front man that took team talks and was the front of it, really. But it's going to be interesting to see how, you know, Beale comes in and he makes his own changes to it, because he's obviously looking at it and thinking, I want to do this my own way. And I kind of, you know, I had a laugh yesterday that Beale must have had his eye on this job as soon as sort of Gerrard left, really. So, you know, I think it's something that when you listen to him, he's obviously got his own ideas about it. David T, what is it, you know, you go back to how he played under Gerrard and the 55 season, which was very good, but you also go back to last season, which at the start of last season, we was 4 points clear, but we had a lot of games at home we drew. The performances weren't great. We went a bit stale. You go back to the Malmo defeats that we had. So what is it, you know, that Beale can bring to this team, you know, and take it forward? Because for me, there is still a worry that if he goes back to the same formation and the same tempo that we had previously, we're just going to see more of the same. I think it's really important that he takes it on.
Yeah, well, I've said in the past, fitness is the big thing, and as we discussed last week, I don't think David was here when we discussed it. I still think that Rangers should have their own fitness coaches. I don't think a trainer should be allowed to bring in fitness coaches. I think we should have, they call them sports science people, employed by Rangers, and Rangers say, listen, we'll make sure your players are fit. This is what we're going to give you, and then it's up to you to put the football side to it. But Rangers should take the fitness of players into their own hands, and I think bringing in 5-6 people that we've got to pay off, if the manager doesn't fit in, then I think it's ridiculous. I mean, what was it we're paying now, 4.5 million or something like that is the word that people are saying. To pay off a full team, I think that's ridiculous. As I say, we should have basic fitness, sports science people in to get the fitness side of it done. I've sort of lost what your question was now, but
it's just going back to the time under Beale and Gerrard, just the way they played. Everyone keeps, looking at the positives, and there was plenty of positive, but there was also a lot of negatives as well. And I'm just interested to see how Beale's going to really, make this his own and make it successful.
Well, what I'm worried about, I mean, I shouldn't be worried already, but is I hope that we get the Gerrard fight in Beale. I hope either he gets that himself, or he brings in a number 2 that's got this sort of a Gerrard fight, because I think most of the fighting talk came from Gerrard at that time. I think Beale was a sort of a strategician, and I think that's hope. I hope that we're not going to miss that sort of a get out there and get into them talk, because that's something we need as well. It's something that I think that's what Gio missed. I don't think that he had that in him, and I think that's a big. I mean, we always say. Certain things that other managers say we should be hanging that up in the dressing room wall. We shouldn't have to hang it up, things up in the dressing room wall. That should be in us. That fight, go out and fight and get into them. And that's what I hope that Beale gets, because I don't know whether that's in him. And it's certainly something that he needs to bring in his team when he comes. Although I think it's pretty certain he's coming now.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to happen. I've just seen a tweet there from Alex Crook of TalkSport saying he's heard it's a done deal, and he is quite on the pulse with these things, at TalkSport. So yeah, I think whether it's today or tomorrow or Tuesday, it's going to happen. And I can see, the QPR fans are absolutely fuming that he's away, which is always a good sign, Davy P. That when I know I think they've not won in the last 5. And it was after he was at Ibrox, obviously, a month ago for the Aberdeen game. And David, I want to actually ask you, do you think there was more to it, him being at Ibrox that day, or do you just think it was, a coincidence that was planned months before?
I think, being the realist, there would have been some level of conversation, even if it was, almost pretend, we speak in jest, but we're actually really speaking seriously. Someone at Ibrox would have sounded him out. If this offer were ever, imagine the scenario, Michael. Could you see the day, and all that? That's just a nod would have done it, I'm sure. So I think pretty much they knew that Michael Beale would be available should Gio crash and burn, which after that Liverpool game is when he crashed and burned, because that night, I mean, I've been at Ibrox, going to Ibrox a long time. I can't recall a single instance where Rangers players on the pitch chucked it. They just didn't have it anymore. They folded as a team. They were no longer a team. It was every man for himself. Don't give me the ball. I just want out of here, which is just completely unacceptable, which is why that moment, I mean, there were some clues leading up to that, but that night, that was Gio's team out there, and he didn't have enough over that team for them to continue to fight that night. They just gave in, and that for me is unacceptable. And we saw in the 55 season, which I'm hoping Michael Beale will restore, will be that, we were relentless, I think was what we titled it as, and we went after everyone, home and away. We were eventually unbeaten throughout the whole season. So that level of commitment. So I think it's rather shameful, that we have to question the commitment of professional football players who have been paid a healthy salary, and they're out there, live on TV in the Champions League, and they just threw the towel in, which is completely unacceptable. And I think that's what, for me, that's what done for Gio. That was just not on that level. And he'd pretty much set them up with the excuses, straight from the Ajax game when we can't compete. I know that there was kind of some discussion over as to whether he was taken out of context or not. The very fact that he mentioned it was good enough, and the fact that Gio never once came off, went to the press and actually told them exactly what he thought of them, which he should have done that night, because he should have told those players publicly that level of performance is simply unacceptable. He didn't do it. He just kept protecting them. And I I think he was far better at protecting them than they were at protecting him. Because I think, as Davies just said, I don't think they were. He had lost the dressing room. I don't think they were playing for Gio. I think there was a lack of respect. There was something missing anyway. I don't know whether they had a wee fallout over tactics or something. But whatever happened, you could see on the pitch that weren't quite connected. And tomorrow, hopefully, we can flush all that out. We get Michael Beale in. He knows some of the players that are there. But I'm hoping that that's not going to protect him, just that he's familiar with them. They will be based on their performances. That's what I expect of Michael Beale, or any Rangers managers for that matter.
Yeah, you're right, David. And you go back to that Liverpool game. That was where Gio completely was done. And I think there was performances before that. To be honest, I think the Ajax game away. I think that was 3 days after the performance away at Parkhead, and we was even worse at Ajax. I think. But what I do agree with you in terms of he never threw the players under the bus when he should have, because. By the way, I'm not letting the players away with this, and this is why I say Bill needs to come in. He needs to put an arm around a few, and he needs to get them playing, because we're not going to be able to sign a whole new squad in January. But he needs to be, you said it as well, ruthless. He needs to come in and be ruthless with them, and he needs to go right. I think that the problem is, and Bill did say this in his interview with BT a few weeks ago, that he knew some of the players that are still at Ibrox now. What they done with 55, that was as far as they were going to be successful with us, and he said that. But the problem we didn't get the backing that summer from the board, and obviously the results against Malmo was probably the main reason why we didn't go and get a couple of quality players to kick it on. But he says so they went into that season. So I do like that vibe that he said. He knows that, and I really hope he does come in and he rips it up. Because I think it needs it, because these players done it under Gerrard as well. Even before that, we see the performance of in the Scottish Cup semi-final last season, the League Cup final against Hibs. So it's not this is a thing with these players, and Gio completely lost the dressing room. Whatever there's rumours now coming out that what happened in Portugal and etc. But not being funny, if you're a Rangers player and you're putting on that blue jersey, that shouldn't. That you should still give your all, and they didn't. So to David here, I'll bring you in on this. What's your sort of thoughts on what me and Davey were sort of saying there in terms of the players and he does need to get an arm around few and maybe you've got players like Kamara we've all moaned about, but he did play his best football under Gerrard and Bill. You've got Brian Kent there as well, but then again, are we just hoping for the same what we've been doing over the last sort of 2 or 3 years anyway, instead of just ripping it up?
Well, against PSV, Kamara was absolutely brilliant, wasn't he? That was probably one of his best games in a Rangers shirt. But to go on from what you were saying about after the Celtic game, we lost about 11 goals in 3 games. We lost to Celtic, we lost to Ajax, and then we lost 3-0 to the Italians, Napoli. So that was 11 goals in 3, and then we went on to I'm not even going to say it, that tanking against Liverpool, and just to keep saying that we're just not at that. We've not got the players to go to that level. Well, we beat Dortmund, and they were their Champions League level. We've beat the Leipzig. We beat they at that time were top German level. So I don't know where he got that from. All of a sudden, bringing the players down, that you're not good enough. If I go into a park, I would be telling the players you are good enough. I think you get it the other way about. But hopefully Beale comes in, and that's where I think Gio went wrong. He just couldn't. After that run of results, he just couldn't keep that up, and eventually. Even if he'd sort of hung up around after 1 or 2 results, he couldn't have been enjoying his job himself. If you go to work every day and you know that everybody hates you being there, there's nothing worse. I've worked with bosses before. I wasn't the easiest person for a boss to be honest. But I think he did. I think he will get. He'll get the players around him again. I think they like playing for him. They enjoyed playing for him. As I say, I still believe that he done most of the hard work for Gerrard. There's rumours that Gerrard hardly done anything. They was hardly on the training ground. I don't know how much that is true or not, but I think he's got to bring in. I would let him bring in one or two as a team, say. But I'm totally against this whole bringing in six different players, six different coaches. So, but I mean, it doesn't matter who you bring in as a manager. It's always a risk. I mean, even a manager that's won everything in the game can come in to your club and it can be rubbish. It's just the way things go. Look at the Van Gaal now. I mean, the Dutch team. They used to be really used to love watching the Dutch team because they were that so attacking. And that's a thing that Marco van Basten during the week there, he said that coaches are ruining football. He says because they've got players so frightened to have any individual skills, to use any skills at all, that the players are just so frightened to try anything different, and they're being overcoached was what he said, and that. If you look at Rangers, then Gio, and it sort of works out as well, because he also said that there's nobody in the field these days that are willing to stand up and take the role of leader. He says the Dutch team haven't got it. No, I've gone back to our team. Everybody's saying Tavernier can't do it. So there's nobody in our team, nobody in Rangers team takes real control on the field as well. So that's a thing, and it's maybe you've got a vision on it. What do you think? Do you think that coaches are overcoaching football? Because I certainly think that there is a danger of that. And if you look at, it used to be that it was always players in the papers. Now most of the headlines are about the coaches. So there's sort of a football's turned on its head to it's the coaches that are the important people now in the game and not the players. Don't know what you're thinking that.
Davey, I'll let you come into that first, WP.
Well, I'm think of the day, in the changing room when Walter Smith was sitting facing Michael Laudrup and Paul Gascoigne, and I mean, what did Walter Smith have to offer them in terms of here's what I want you to do, in terms of tactics, or I think it could have been no more than just go out and do what you're good at, because how could you possibly tell Gascoigne and Laudrup, this is what I want you to do. Don't do that. Do this. Hold on, Walter. You played with Dundee United. So I don't think you can coach them to that level. The way it's got to be. There's got to be a team, and you've got to play to your strengths and the strengths of those players. But ultimately, you have to let the players go on with it. How could you possibly tell Paul Gascoigne, Paul? I want you to track back, and when we lose possession, do this. When you've got a guy of that talent, and see with Laudrup, of that ability, and all that he brought to Rangers, and all that Laudrup brought to Rangers, and the coach is going to tell him what to do. I mean, I can understand, within a structure. I think the tactics must be to the rest of the players, just get the ball to Laudrup, and let him go on with it. So it's about quality of player. It must be the more ability the players have, the less coaching's involved, I would guess. So, but I'm hoping Michael Beale. But I think that the point about overcoaching seems to be, I think there's a wee touch of it with England the other night when they were, doing the Harry Maguire and Stones passing game, and it seems to be who would get the most touches. I think I counted 12. At one instance, they passed the ball between them. They'd 6 touches each. And when they just got, and it just lasts, God, this is just like being in the club deck watching Rangers. It was torturous. But I think, that we need to be better than that. We need to be, more confident that we can take these guys on, and that we've got the ability to get through these guys at will, and not waiting for, wait 5 minutes, with 20 touches of the ball before we think there's an opening. Let's go make it happen. Players should always be in the move. It is fundamentally quite a simple game. So, and I think the better players you have, then the less coaching's involved. So, I think it's duff players you need to coach. Good players, as long as you've got enough of them, then you're pretty much home and hosed. Which is, you saw. Did you see Messi's Argentina last night when the ball just gets played into him? 2 touches, first touch, lays it on, bang, goal. So did the coach tell him to do that, or did he just do it? So I think he just did it. He's just got it. And we want to, obviously, I think that the fundamental problem here for me is the conversation, as I said earlier, between the board and Michael Beale, and setting out what is it we want to achieve here, what level do we want to get to, what are the milestones in progressing this thing, because we're probably about 3 transfer windows away from Michael Beale being properly assessed in terms of what's Michael Beale bringing to Rangers. We didn't even get that far with Gio, because it was as plain as the nose in your face that this was utter dung. And the approach was all too negative, it was all too slow, it was all too structured. When we're not making cars here, we're playing football. So get the right quality of player in, get them out there to do their thing, and trust them.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, David. And the overcoaching thing, I think that is football nowadays. And you made. I was going to bring up England the other night with Gareth van Bronckhorst. It was like watching Rangers the other night. It was so slow and boring to watch. And I think coaches can have too much of an impact on players. I know what you're saying, David, but there's not a Messi. We don't currently have a Messi. And when do you see a Rangers player get the ball from 25 yards and pick one out? Something we just don't do enough. And I'm hoping, that there are changes. I do think Bill will come in and it will get a bounce. I do believe that. But again, something that you come onto there, our recruitment has not been good enough in the last few windows. And that is where I look at our squad at the moment and I'm like, we're still lacking in a lot of areas. And we could get Pep Guardiola in, and until January, where he's able to go and get some players, it's going to be tough. We've got 3 or 4 games before the window opens, and then you've got a game on the 2nd. So, realistically, we've got 4 or 5 games without any new players. For me, Davey T, I'll come on to you. Go on,
Mason, can I just come in on that point? Because, look at Ryan Kent. Now, you're not telling me that Ryan Kent all of a sudden become a bad player overnight. Something has happened to Ryan Kent, whether he's told to be stuck out in the wing all the time. I think we've discussed this before. But, he's a perfect example of a player that just looks like he's just lost all confidence. He looks like he's been tied to do a certain role in the team. And that all his own skill, his imaginary things that he tries, has all just been taken away from him. And, players do have bad periods. But I just think that Ryan Kent has just been suffering from overcoaching. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. And, let's face it, Ryan Kent, he's been put in a far more defensive role now. But the most important thing was that he was tracking back and defending and then trying to get the ball and doing great things to get his chances. But no, that's one thing, one player that you can just see that something's happened. That's just taken all confidence away from him, and he doesn't dare to try anything anymore.
But David, I'll stay with you, David T, on Ryan Kent, and I agree. I think but does he want to be it? It's all right. We can say, the manager's done this to that one. For me, he's sort of, his persona and the way he's been coming across is to me is someone that he's actually got better towards the end. But there was a period there where I looked at him and was like, you don't want to be it. And I think Bill needs to come in, and again, I'm coming back to it, but he needs to come in and be ruthless and be, if players don't want to be it, they shouldn't be playing. And I think Ryan Kent has been one of them. I think he's been in the team even when his performances have been miles off it.
I find it hard to believe that a player goes out onto the park and thinks, I'm just going to blaze about today. I think first of all, and I keep going on about it. But I think, first of all, if you're fit enough, yeah, then you're good enough. If the skill, these players have got that skill, but if they're not fit, then they become lazy and they don't try things. And that might not be that might just be loose in your head. I mean, it might not be you might not think that that you're lacking things, but obviously your fitness level has a big influence in that. So, but I can only say for our own situation, I had a boss that I just couldn't go on with. We just hated each other. And my life was hell for about 3, 4, 5 years under him. And I didn't want to be there, but I still went out and had to do my job. Otherwise, I would have got sacked. But that was the one thing. I never gave him a chance to sack me. But I know what it's like to work under a boss that you hate and you can't stand, and he can't stand you. It's absolutely horrible, and that's, I think, it could be a part of. There's definitely something happened with the players in Gio, especially at the end up, because I don't believe that these players went from beating PSV a few months ago to the 7-1 drubbing by Liverpool. That bad in such a short time. I really find it hard that, to get to know why. I mean, why can we all of a sudden in 3, 4, 2 months, or what was it, become so bad in 2 months? It's just unbelievable. It must be mentally. I mean, it's not that it can't be. It must be something in their heads it's turned, because it can't be. You can't lose a skill that you've had for years all in 2 months. It's impossible.
But I'll throw that again to you, Davey. That's what these squad of players have done. That's what they've done over and over. They've been brilliant, and then suddenly, bang, we're back. When they're back down, the consistency level just hasn't been there. You know, that's what they've done their whole time here. But David P, I'll come to you on this one before we move on to finish up on the World Cup. I think this is a really, really good point from Teddy Bear, and Bill is going to come under a lot of scrutiny, and you know, I think there's going to be a lot of backlash as well in terms of him leaving QPR, and you know, comes under even more pressure if the Rangers job, you know, isn't more pressure enough. But the board are appointing him, and they're his man. They need to back him, and that is going to be the biggest thing, I think, for January and the summer. He needs backing, and we need to get quality players in the building.
Almost goes without saying, Mason, if the board have going to bring Michael Beale in and not give the guy the resources to actually do the job that they've just discussed with him, then they're more to blame than he is. So, but Michael Beale's not stupid, right? So the conversation between the grown-up board and the grown-up Michael Beale has got to be along the lines of, what resources can I expect to bolster the squad and to deal with, because Michael Beale knows these players. What am I going to do with some of the players that I'm going to inherit? Because he will know some of these players very well, so he knows what he's walking into to a large extent. So, having agreed that, then the board have to deliver. The board have to deliver here. So, if he's not going to get the adequate resources to change things, to actually make a change, so then he'd be better not to take the job, because he's been set up for a fall. So if he's not going to get that required resource in place from the outset, at least, you know, kind of broad brush numbers, then he would be stupid to take the job, because he's heading for a fall. And in terms of, you know, you're right, Michael Beale will come in and has put his arm around some players, and I'm hoping that he does that. But in terms of Morelos, I'm hoping that when he puts his arm around him, it will be to usher him to the taxi that sat outside Ibrox to take him to the airport, because he is not a team player, you know, and you're going to have honest conversations with some of these players as to what do you actually bring, because his job is really about synergy, isn't it? You know, it's about, you know, individual components with varying levels of ability and trying to put these guys together to make them into something more than the sum of the parts. You know, it's kind of cliche shite, right? But that's essentially his job. So some of these bits that he's been left to do that won't be the required parts. So they need jettisoned, and he needs to bring in quality to plug the gaps. And if we're relying on Ross Wilson on his track record to do that, then Jesus Christ, Michael Beale's got some job. I almost feel sorry for him, and the guy's not even stepped over the door.
That's it, and the pressure's on big time with Ross Wilson, because obviously he's not going anywhere, so he needs to deliver as well this January, this window. If he doesn't deliver this one, then he should be another one joining Morelos in that taxi, Davey P.
Yeah.
He will be driving
it free of charge. David T, let's finish it up then. The last point on Michael Beale, and there's some comments now about the rebuild. So Tom Lawrence, is going to be back sooner rather than later. There was a rumor going around last week from the Scottish press that he was going to be out till March, which thankfully was wrong, and we're hoping to have him, January time. But obviously he's been out a while. But how many signings would you like us to make? Beale to go and make in January, David T.
Well, I don't think it's going to take one window. I think this is going to be a bigger window. So I think January will be a bit of sticky tape over the bad bits. I think the big turnaround will be next year. I think so there'll be a lot of players going. I think we'll sell a lot of players, hopefully get some money in. And we've got over Kamara. He might be the only one that sort of goes at the January window, because I think he chucked it when the Nice deal didn't go through. I think he was hoping that he was going to France to play. But I think the big build will be next year. So I'm not really expecting that much in January, to be that honest with you. I think the board are more hoping that they can get this team on track. I'll be really surprised if we bring in a lot of players in January. It's the worst time to bring in players as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There might be watching the World Cup. There's a few players that maybe we can get Bayern Munich to take Tillman back and bring that guy. Is it Davies you call him that plays for Canada? He was quite good, although he didn't do too well today. But no, there's a few players there that we could be looking at. But no, I think I really think that most of the team need to go. There's not really a player that I would say I would like to keep him. To be honest with you, I think it's time for even Tavernier and Goldson. I think it's time for them to move on and let's start afresh.
Yeah, there's no time for sentiment, and that's the big thing for me, and that's going to be where I think Beale will foul or not. I think if he's going to keep the players that have kept fouling for us time and time again, then he's going to foul. So yeah, and it's going to be interesting, how the ball back him with new players. I'd like to go and get 3 players to January. I think we've got to get a right winger and another striker and a midfielder for me. They're the 3 positions, but finances, and as you said, Davey, January is a very difficult window to get players in.
Well, it certainly would be good to get Morelos away in January already, because we'll get hopefully maybe a couple 100,000 for him instead of. I mean, I know they were talking about millions years ago, about a year ago, but there's no way we're getting that now, especially if he's still in the condition that he was in. But it's unfortunate, because it's another. I don't understand that he didn't get himself fit, because he must have. He just can't have that deep fight that I want to do my best. He must have lost that somewhere, and you can't do that as a professional footballer. I mean, you're a professional. It's your job. You should be doing it to your best of your ability. You shouldn't need a coach to get that into you. So hopefully Morelos goes, and it breaks my heart to say it because I love Morelos, but I think we need to try and get some money for him, even if it's 500,000 or a million, would be great. If we could cover the million it cost us to buy him, that would be great. And then it means we've had all these years service from him for £1 million, or for nothing if we get $1 million for him. So that would be.
I just can't see the state he's in, anyone coming in for him, Davey. I think if they're going to take a gamble on Morelos, I think it's going to be free in the summer. I think we're going to be paying his wages for another few months yet. In an ideal world, we get rid of him and a couple of others that just are not contributing anything. But we know that that's not the way that it works. And the most important, just to finish up on January, I just want it to be quality over quantity, because we've got too many players similar. If we only get 2 players and they're quality players, I'll take that over 5, 6 average ones. So that's the big thing. But David P, let's finish up then with a World Cup. We did promise Colin, who's enjoying himself in Mexico at the moment, that we would, touch on the World Cup. So let's finish up on that. But who's impressed you during this World Cup, and who's your favourites at the moment?
I think France, from what I've seen, look, Mbappe just looks unplayable, doesn't he? Their quality just throughout that side. So France have been the standout for me so far. But I mean, there's been a few, low results, and it kind of to hark back to, when Van Bronckhorst is telling them after the Ajax that we can't compete, and if you believe you can't, then you won't. And then you look at, some of the results that we've had when Saudi Arabia are playing Argentina, so on paper, you look at those two sides, it's just not even a contest. It's not even a contest. And yet, here, Saudi Arabia won 2-1. So, and that's what's unforgivable for me about Gio. And when he's giving them a ready-made excuse, we can't. And so, but to get back to the World Cup, you can see that what the difference a coach can make. So, I mean, Qatar have just been, that's just, gosh, they're Sterling Albion, who have just been in a coaching session for 5 months, very well organised. But in terms of, you just can't make honey with bees shite, as my mum used to say. So they are what they are. So, but certainly in terms of the France, I mean, I'm sorry to see the Jerry's go out.
They drew 1-0. I don't know.
They get back to one each. Yeah.
So
they are.
they're
So
still in it. I think they're still in it.
They're back in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a few surprises, but it'll be Brazil, France. There'll be England. Will probably be in the last 8, probably the last 4, maybe. They will do their way to Boris to tears. But I mean, you look at that England team and Gareth Southgate. Just my standout when I looked at England's bench the other night, and then I looked at the 11 he started with. I'm thinking, I think he could replace all of those people, with a better team. And so he's kind of loyal, and he plays this system. And then he went out. So if we don't see radical changes, then Gareth Southgate will be joining Gio, wherever they are, in the south of France somewhere for the summer or the winter. But in terms of the World Cup, I've watched a few games. It's been some good. But what it does do is that the breadth of players, Ecuador, Mexico, even some of the Middle Eastern teams, Iran, even Morocco today, so there are good players out there. And if we had a scouting network worthy of the name, you would be thinking we would be accessing some of these players, and their peers. So there is talent out there. We just need to put in place, which I'm hoping what Michael Beale will do. He's going to bring systems and processes to the Rangers and put in things in place which will eventually lead to success on the pitch. There's no magic wand. It's about doing things right and doing the right things. So, and that's all I'm expecting. But he's got a huge job. But more important, who's got a bigger job are the Rangers board. Because if the Rangers board don't do this properly, Michael's doomed from the word go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will be an interesting one tomorrow. And I can't wait for his, hopefully, tomorrow, and we can see his press conference, because there's going to be some juicy questions asked there and interesting answers. Davey T, let's come on to you then with the World Cup. Who's impressed you, and who's your favourites to win it?
Well, really, I think the games have been pretty crap that they've been on up till now. I mean, Brazil scored a brilliant goal, but I think the big talking points for me is far again. I don't know if you remember the Canada game against Belgium. I think it was. They should have been at 4 penalties. They got one in the beginning, and then they should have had 4 other penalties. And how far missed it? How they said it wasn't a penalty, I don't know. And then a couple of games later, you get Portugal. You get Ronaldo. He lets himself just fall onto the ground. Nobody touches him. And VAR gives a penalty. And I thought, like, no, this is rigged. This can't be any other way than rigged, because how you can give the one or not give the one and give that for Ronaldo, then it was unbelievable. But that's the sort of a things that have jumped out at me. The other thing that's jumped out is this blooming armband, this rainbow armband crap that we're seeming to getting built up with, stopping a Welsh woman getting into the game because she's wearing a rainbow hood. Nah, this is just a World Cup that should never have happened. It should never. It was just, if you want to talk about this World Cup, it should all be about corruption in FIFA. The head of FIFA even now, if you take it that FIFA's their head office is in Switzerland, and he lives in Qatar, because he can't go and live in Switzerland because the Swiss police are after him for fraud and corruption. So I mean, that's the head of your FIFA wanted by the police. It's just totally unreal. So this World Cup for me, I'm afraid, Argentina were quite good today. They turned it round. Messi, and the second goal was absolutely a peach of a goal. But the games, they've been pretty rubbish up until now. Canada, I really thought Canada were great against the Belgians, and then today they just didn't turn up. They just they fell through. So don't know. Then the other one was I can't remember who it was, but they lost to Costa Rica. They were really brilliant in the first game, and then they lost to Costa Rica, which I couldn't understand. Japan, yeah, that's right, Japan. Yeah, the Japanese were great in the first game, and then the second game against Costa Rica, they lose that. So really funny. Some games the Germans lose. I don't know. See, you were talking about South Africa. Did you in Britain get the film of the South African coach in the dressing room at half time? Don't know. It's absolutely brilliant. And that's the way a coach should be. It was really getting them pepped up to go and listen. Yours are out. This your big chance. Get out there, and he was jumping about and really quite funny. So no, but it's as I say, it's a World Cup about corruption and not really about football. Football's a secondary thing.
Yeah,
I'm keeping my Mr. Grumpy hat on for that one.
Yeah, no, I agree in terms of it should never have happened, but it's been a bit weird watching games in December. I can't really get into it. I'm be honest, I just want to get Rangers back, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm with you, Davey P. France are my favourites in a minute. I don't think anyone's been great though. I think there's been some average sides in there, and there has been a lot of shock results. But I think the tournament, once you get into the next round after the group stage, that's when it starts heating up and you see, some better teams. But yeah, if I had to put money on anyone, it'd be France.
Mason, one of the good points I think which could come from this would be the amount of time that they've added on at the end of the games.
Yeah.
Which is probably more truly reflects the stoppages which have been happening throughout the game. Because one of the sources of frustration for me is the amount of time that's added on when you just think it's completely made up. We had an instance recently, the game at Ibrox, I think it may have been the Livingston game, where they added on a few minutes at the end. But during the added on minutes, we had the rolling about the grounds, and then the medical staff are on treating them. And then we don't further add on, that time, because I would be quite happy for the referees to let them roll about the ground. But just go tell them that every minute you lie there will be added on at the end of the game, and see how long they lie there, because they're being absolutely played, some of these people. And the SPFL, really should be sending out some sort of edict to the referees in terms of, the Livingstons and most clubs actually who come to Ibrox, who are hell-bent on wasting time from the outset, and just explain to them, your wasting time is a waste of time, because we will just add it all on at the end, and if we're here until 6:30, so be it. because that would put a stop to it. And
can you imagine though, David? Can you imagine if they done it? Can you imagine if they done it the games that we play? We'd be playing until the next day.
Yeah, but the referee should just explain to them. See, when they've got it down to a fine art, and McGregor's quite good at it. When we play in Europe, when he throws the ball away and down to the black arts. But I think if they understand from the outset that there's actually no benefit in doing it, that this time will just be added on at the end of the game, then you could cut a lot of that out, which is just, it's just tantamount to cheating for me. But
Davey, can I just come in?
Off my chest.
Davey, what about Celtic? They get about 14 minutes now. How long will they get if they bring in this new rule? Celtic get about 45 minutes extra.
Yeah. Well, play till next holiday, that's what it is.
Yeah, we just have to find another referee. We agree one referee and then at the last minute change it so that the guy that's been bribed just isn't actually the referee.
With Celtic, it's just keep playing to your score, isn't it? That's the way the referees go with that one.
That's what it will be. But boys, let's finish it off there. And I just want to. We can't do a score prediction this week, but Curry's put in a question. So when you say your goodbyes tonight, please answer this one. Would you want David King back on the ball? So first off, I'll say David T, thanks for coming on tonight. Would you want Dave King back on the ball?
If he's going to improve it, then I would like to see it. If it's going to put in money, then yeah. But if he either should get on the board and do something, or he should just get out the road and let the board go on with their work. Because this sniping in the media and sniping through 1872 is just a load of crap. He should either. I mean, I've nothing against him coming back if he's going to make a difference, help. But getting that's a swiping from the wings. No, I just don't. Either do something or get out of it and leave the club alone. That's the way I'm sort of positioned.
Nice one. Cheers, Davey. Davey P, thanks for coming on tonight. So what's your thoughts?
Thanks, guys. It's good. I must admit that Dave King has a special place in my heart because, in 2014, when himself and the Three Bears stumped up the money, they bought the shares at the new year, got to the AGM and absolutely saved us from the abyss. And that was done with Dave King going into his own pocket with his own money, buying those shares. So he took some gamble that day. So there was a whole load of, rescue rangers, and I think we raised £750,000. How many? So the Rangers family worldwide raised £750,000, and Dave King forked it into his own pocket to the tune of about £15 million to buy those shares that won us the AGM that got rid of the spivs. So for that and for nothing else, Dave King bats for Rangers, and I would have him back in a New York minute, because the current board and the lack of communication, Douglas Park, I don't think I've ever heard Douglas Park's voice, never mind anything else, never mind what his thoughts are. So Dave King, for me, he comes with all his flaws. He's not perfect, and, sometimes he would drive you nuts, but he is 100% a Rangers man. I would have him any day of the week.
Cheers, David. And I agree. I'll finish it off, and I'd have Dave King back in a second. I think as soon as Dave King left, I think as a football club we've gone stale. So I'd have Dave King back in a second. I think you've summed it up perfectly well there, David P. And thanks again for tonight, boys, and thanks for everyone for watching and commenting as always. The aim will be on. At the moment we'll be on next Sunday, but we may do a little emergency one if Michael Beale gets announced in the next couple of days, if we can get enough on. But watch out for the socials, and we'll post if we're going to be coming on the next couple of nights. But as always, thanks for watching. We are the people.